Okay, we're live. Let's give it a few minutes. Make sure everything's working. Make sure there's actually some sound. Not like last time. If you're watching this not live and watching it later, last time I did a live Facebook video, I didn't have a microphone on for the first 6 minutes. That was embarrassing. All right, let's make sure that everybody knows what's happening. Hope everybody's having a lovely evening. It's not quite Friday, but it certainly feels like it, let me tell you. All right. Well, anyway. There we are. Okay, it's there. Ну что, Даник, что ты всем людям скажешь интересным? Даник, скажи hello. Say hello, Даник, say hello. Вот туда смотри. Даник, смотри туда. Hello. Скажи hello. Hello. Okay, everybody, we're waiting just for a few more seconds. Make sure everybody knows that we are here. I'm going to remind the event page in case some people are actually on the event page. Actually, never mind. I don't know. I don't even know how to do it. I can't do two things at once. I can only do one thing at once. So that's just going to be it. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all. Welcome to a short little Facebook Live and Ask Me Anything that I'm doing as a kind of official warm-up to launch week and a half, or launch 2 weeks for right before we make book 5 available on sale. Little update on the writing process for those of you who are interested. Well, actually, update first of all on the libations. Very important. Right, kid? No, don't tell the kid. I just got myself some... yes, I just got myself a little bit of absolutely lovely... Ommegang. Now, those of you who do not know about Ommegang, you must look it up. Ommejang. It's a local brewery that does a lot of Belgian-style brews. And this is one of their famous, the Three Philosophers, which in the seminary over here we call the Three Hierarchs. But don't tell anybody that. That's a secret. Okay. So, updates. Today, okay, so some of you might get mad at me, and I apologize in advance, but things must be said. I kind of envy George R.R. Martin and his gusto at killing off characters. Because the thing is, he's figured out something. Those of you who write long series might know this, but trying to keep in your head all of the threads that are going on at the same time, especially as you're coming up to the end, and making sure that you don't, thank you, Professor, making sure you don't actually miss one of those major threads. Yeah, you could write a big story Bible, or you could kind of map it all out. But the thing is, you actually have to have that map in front of you at all times, even when you're writing. That's not going to happen. And in the process of writing, like I mentioned before in one of my previous videos, when you're writing, when you're in the midst of flow, you are not thinking about the technical details of what is going on in the story. You are thinking about the scene, you're in the character's head, and you're letting things happen organically. Look at this kid. He's looking at himself and he loves it. Oh dear. So, I'm not complaining. What I'm saying is, we're getting to the end of book 5. There's a lot of characters. Not as many, of course, as George R.R. Martin. But I kind of envy his gusto at killing them all off. Because it would solve so many problems. If I could just, chop the heads off half of my characters at inopportune moments and have everybody go extremely... well, hello, Chris McIntosh, who is here. Excellent. Good to see you, Chris McIntosh. Chris, excellent. Welcome. All that to say that today, I killed a major character, everybody. Uh-oh. Who did he kill? I'm not going to tell you. I killed a major character today. And yesterday, I killed another major character. In fact, the death count is a little bit higher than I expected. Now, don't get all worried yet, because the point is one of the major places that book 5 is going on is one of the major one of the major settings for book 5 is the Land of the Dead. Land of the Dead is a very real place in Russian fairy tales. Yes, no. So, yeah, they're still kind of alive. They're not. They're dead, but they're in the land of the dead. And what relation does that have? What reference does that have to the living world? Well, that would be spoilery, wouldn't it? Right? He knows. He knows all about it. So, dead or not dead, can they come back? Well, Gandalf came back, so maybe they can. Speaking of Gandalf, on Monday, we've been moving it down several times for various reasons, but it's kind of a weird time to be alive, so things getting moved down and out of order is not so weird. Future Ice Walkers, Seraphim Hegwood, ha ha ha, that would be telling. Anyway, I am recording the June episode of the Amon Soul podcast with Father Andrew. I'm supposed to do it tomorrow in the morning, but we wanted to get a little bit more prepared because the subject we're talking about is the Istari, is wizards. And as it turns out, there's a lot of really interesting stuff about wizards out there. It's live, my dear. Everybody say hello to my wife.
Hello to everybody.
There you go. You can see her now. Let's see what others. Yeah. So, I wanted to make sure that we had as much interesting information in our heads about the Istari as we possibly could. And I was pleased to find out. I was reading the Unfinished Tales today, and there's an essay about the wizards in Tolkien's world, in the Unfinished Tales. And I was pleased to realize that I remembered a lot of the stuff that I'd read many years ago when I was actually reading books like the Silmarillion and the History of Middle Earth and Unfinished Tales for fun. And as I was reading all this lovely scholarship and the works of Tolkien and stuff that's written about Tolkien, I just remembered how wonderful and how amazing Tolkien's vision and Tolkien's his creative work, how amazing it was, and what he was able to do. Really, it's almost unparalleled in the history of literature to be able to single-mindedly give yourself to an entire legendarium that is so focused. It's one single world. Of course, that world is infinitely complex, but for me, it's hard to focus on any one story for a long time as it is. But for him to dedicate an entire life to the unfolding of a single long story, it's pretty incredible. And the amount of love he put into it and the amount of scholarship he put into it, it's truly amazing. So we'll be talking about the Istari, the wizards, and we were recording on Monday morning. Now, those of you who are my patrons on patreon.com/Nicholas Kotar will be getting or already have received an exclusive link to listen in on the taping of this month's Amon Soul podcast episode with me and Father Andrew. You're going to be silent, but you will be able to see me in my brand new podcast box. I've showed you a few photographs, those of you who follow me on Facebook. But you'll actually see me live inside it. You will just not be able to speak with me. I've tested out the technology. There is a possibility of connecting you to my computer sound without you actually being able to speak. So come a little early. This is going to be on Monday at 9 a.m. We're going to be recording at Monday 9 a.m. So come a little bit early if you are one of my patrons. If you're not one of my patrons, it's never too late to join. All tiers are welcome. This is going to be a special insider kind of bonus for my patrons. So if you've been on the fence and wanting to see what my Patreon is all about, come and join us at least for this. I also wanted to say that we are reading for the book club on my Patreon, which is also at all tiers. We are reading this month, or these 2 months probably. Yes, we are reading the great book, the Red Book of Westmarch. Somebody quipped, because when I put this photo on Facebook, somebody quipped it should be a red cover. Yeah, I know. It's not. I don't care. It's beautiful. It's hardcover. It's got this gorgeous design. Of course, why would you put the ring on the cover? I don't know, but anyway, I guess some people just like the design of it. But this is just gorgeous, and even it's a 50th anniversary edition. We got this from my dad for his birthday a little while back, and it's so pretty. It's just so nice. It's got these lovely illustrations on the front and the back, and I think there's inserted illustrations inside the text, but I could be wrong about that. Yeah, there are no illustrations inside, which is fine. I actually don't mind if there are no illustrations in the Lord of the Rings. I don't like to be distracted in my reading. But the cool thing that it does have is this amazing pull-out map. Oh, this is so cool. It is in red and black, and it's the whole thing. Look at this. Look, you can't even see it all in this thing. Look at how gorgeous that is. One of these days I'm going to frame this thing and give it to my dad for another birthday present so he can hang it up on his wall. Or he can just give it to me and I'll hang it up in my office. My dad's like that. So, plenty of stuff going on in LOTR Patreon land. So now is the time, if you wanted to ever join, now is the best time you can do it. Seraphim, yes. Waxing philosophical. Even though the ring is evil, it's a thing of beauty. Very true. Lesson in there somewhere. Well, we might be talking about something along those lines when we are talking with Father Andrew on the podcast, because we will be talking about industry and why it was that Saruman went evil. It has something to do with craft and things of beauty when it becomes an obsession. So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff that we're going to talk about. I'm very excited. I'm also excited to announce to all of you, by the way, at any point, please ask questions about Book 5, about Books 1 through 4, about what I did today, about my garden, anything you like. Ask your questions. I'm here for a while, so now's the chance to pick my brain about whatever you want. So I will be answering them as they come in. So far, there are none, so I'm going to continue blabbing into this camera. I wanted to let you all know that in preparation for the launch of Book 5, which is probably going to be, it's going to be someday between June 27th and July 1st. The reason I can't be specific about it is because Amazon has been having issues with putting new books online. So because of COVID and all of the attendant problems, Amazon, which is usually very quick, has bots working for it constantly, has been pretty slow recently at actually putting stuff up in a timely fashion. So I will have it ready at the end of this month. I don't know when it'll actually be available for purchase. And there's a chance that the paperback is going to be even more delayed, because I have been hearing from people in the industry that Seraphim, you're distracting me. Yes, everything's the brutalism is the brutalism is the fault of everything. Is the cause of all evil, right? So there's a possibility that the paperback might be even more delayed. Ideally, what I want to happen is to have everything come out on the same day. That may not be in my power, so I will do everything possible to make both the ebook and the paperback be available in a single day. But I will let you all know about how it goes. So the good thing is that the book is basically done. Most of it is already with my editor. I'm at the very last part of the book, and I need to finish it up and make sure that all of the strands are woven together perfectly, because like I said, this is the end of Book 5. And it's not going to be the kind of end of a series where suddenly I pull out the rug from under everybody's feet and say, oh, whoops, there is no ending. I'm going to write 5 more books in a different series that's only tangentially related to this. This series is going to have an end. There will be an open question at the end of this series, but it's going to refer to the beginning of a new story. So the story of Voron and all of his family and friends is going to be done in Book 5. You will be happy to hear. I should put out the album, Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost. Ooh, I should try it out. You're right. It sounds really good. And Seraphim's got his lemon cukes, not cuts, are coming in. Delicious heirloom, might want to try. We have so many things. Keep an eye on my Facebook page and my Instagram page if you're there. I'm going to be putting up photos. We have a really nice big greenhouse. It's doing what it's supposed to. There's tons of tomatoes. They're really starting to come out. There's a few green ones that have already come out. We're trying out both melons and watermelons this year. They've never worked for us. I'm going to try to see how they work this year inside of the greenhouse. See how that works. Also, for the first time ever, we're trying eggplant, and we already have red strawberries of our own. They're fantastic. They're wonderful. and I'm really looking forward to the single butternut squash that we are growing this year instead of the 15 that we usually grow. But we're going to tend this one like it's our only child, and it better give us a lot of fruit because it's a very tricky plant, that one, especially in our climate, because we have a very hot summer, but the nights become cool fairly early, and the temperature jumps really severely back and forth, even in June and July. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, back to preparations for the launch of book 5. I've decided to to put all of the books on sale because, as I have noticed, and as some people have actually told me, there are some people who have loved books 1, 2. There are some people who have loved books 1 and 2 who have not read books 3 and 4 because they've been waiting for book 5 to come out. So I know that there's some people who like the series who haven't bought the whole thing yet. And I'm thinking of you right now, and I'll explain what I'm doing after I answer Noah's question. Is book 5 going to be similar tone like book 3? So the answer to that question is complex. See, book 3 was kind of my own travel through darkness. I have been reading a lot of actually George Martin right before I read book 3. I was reading a lot of modern grimdark fantasy when I wrote book 3, and I was dealing with my own response to modern fantasy. Book 3 was in a lot of ways my attempt to write the kind of darkness that is expected of the genre now, but without letting it become so black that it becomes nihilistic. And I know I lost some readers because of the darkness. I know that, and I know that some of the people that have really liked books 1 and 2 were not able to rate book 3 as highly because it went so dark. I thought book 5 would be just as dark. It's not. I was really surprised. I had a scene all set up in my mind. Voron goes into a very dark place. At the end of book 3, we know that he's basically traveling together with the Raven. He's basically in league with his greatest enemy because he feels like he's been completely abandoned by the powers in heaven, so in the heights. So forget it. He's gonna go the exact opposite way and see if he can make the Raven do his bidding. Very silly, of course. But I thought that I would have to take that to the bitter end and have him have an even deeper fall than he did at the end of book 3. And a strange thing happened. I talked about this in a previous video that I did about a week ago, maybe 2 now. Is that as I was writing this scene that was going to explore his extreme darkness, suddenly that scene turned into the brightest thing that I have written since book 1. And suddenly I was like, wait a minute, this book is going in a totally different direction than I expected, and I like it. There are some unexpected deaths, I will warn you. But like I said, this book is a lot about dealing with death. It's one of the major themes of it. And it's not a dark ending. It's a very positive ending. You'll see. I'm not going to tell you anymore. It is a direct sequel to book 3. And it's also a direct sequel to book 4, but it's more a direct sequel to book 3 because it's more about the travels of Haidu and Voron. And yes, John mentions Eucatastrophe. In fact, John, I'm purposefully structuring the book along 4 of the stages of the hero's journey, and I'm explicitly going to use the word Eucatastrophe to label part 4. Part 4 is actually called Eucatastrophe, so I'm cheating, but it's true. Full Menace is dark. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. So yeah, that's the answer. It's not going to be as dark as book 3. It's going to be similar in tone, only in the sense that it's continuing the storylines that were raised, the kind of existential angst that was raised at the end of book 3. I'm not going to say anymore because some of you haven't read it. John, you have a question. I'm saving book something. Oh, book 4, so that I can binge both together. But I may need to reread 3 so that I can remember who everybody is. Yeah, if you haven't read book 3 in a while, John, then it would be best to read book 3 right now. I am listening. Sneak peek. Hello, I'm listening to the final chapters of the audiobook of book 3. I finally had the necessary time and money to actually produce it with the same narrator that did books 1 and 2. So it's going to be ready probably next month if everything goes the way it's supposed to. Let's hope. John says, as long as nobody else from Firefly dies, please let's not talk about Firefly. Please, never again. Oh, I feel so burned by that horrible movie. I swear, the show was so great. The show was the encapsulation of what space western should be. I mean, it had its dark moments, right? But it was comedic. It was funny. It was well written. It was whimsical. And then, goodness gracious, that darkness of that movie, it was just awful. I couldn't believe it. A question from Dave Matthews. Hey, Dave. Good to see you. How do you feel about the inclusion of pagan elements in the Lord of the Rings? Glad to see you're doing well during the quarantine. Thank you. How do I feel about the inclusion of pagan elements in Lord of the Rings? Well, you should listen to the first episode I did at the Al Mansoul podcast. I think this is the second episode. Or is it the third? Can't remember now. It's necessary to include pagan parts in the Lord of the Rings because Lord of the Rings is a pre-incarnational paradigm. This is a world that has not yet had the incarnation of the Logos happen. So it's a pagan world. There are glimpses of the divine presence in the fallen world, but they are hardly more than glimpses. And I'm not going to say much about this because I'm going to be talking about this in detail in the next Al Mansoul podcast episode. Actually, I'm going to be specifically addressing this issue, the issue of the pre-incarnational paradigm in Tolkien and how it contrasts with C.S. Lewis's post-incarnational fantasy and science fiction, and why I think Tolkien's approach, yes, including the pagan, is absolutely a far better storytelling choice because it actually frees up the writer. But I'm not going to say more about that because I don't want to give it all away, and I haven't thought it through enough to be able to articulate it as well as it should be because that's a complicated question. So David, tune in on June 25th to the Al Mansoul podcast, and you will, I think, find an answer to your question there. Seraphim is slightly trolling me, I think, right now. What is eucatastrophe constructed in Russian? I have no clue. I'd have to think about that. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Question. John Simmons liked the movie. He liked Serenity. Well, John Simmons, you're welcome to like it. I didn't. All right. Professor Gary Jenkins says, you ended it darkly, and there were indeed dark parts, but were it not so, how could we actually feel like we have come to the light, like the rooster crowing at the gates of Minas Tirith? One of your favorite parts, yes? I have to reread them all in the next few weeks. Yeah, I mean, the point is that this series, so when I started writing this series, it was very much me working through a lot of questions that I had about life. I started writing this a long time ago. By the way, if you're interested in the whole story of book 1 and how it was written and all of the many things that went into it, it took me 7 or 8 years to write it. There's a lot of influences. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background. If that's something that you're really interested in, I can recommend a course that I'm going to be teaching next month for St. Raphael Academy and Scholé Academy. It's a book club on the Song of the Siren with me, the author. So it's a twice a week class. There's a meeting for all of July, starting July 7th and ending July 30th. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty with me, that would be something that I would recommend. If you're interested, I can add the link later on into the comment section here. So yeah, it does have to be dark. The middle book has to be dark because this whole series is very mythic for me in the sense of me working through my own heroes, my own perception of the hero's journey in my life and how to be able to tell that in a way that isn't pedantic or isn't mostly pedantic. That isn't pedantic or isn't kind of mawkish, right? Every writer is obviously going to put a lot of his own self or her own self into what he or she is writing, but I want this to be my attempt to try to write a mythic character. But this is my first series, so I was working through a lot of things. I'm at a point now where I feel a lot more confident with the process, that I can start doing things a little bit more professionally, which I hope is something that you see in books 4 and 5. But book 3 was an exercise in exorcising the darkness in my own self and in the world that I see around me. So it had to be dark, because how else, like Professor Gary said, how else are you going to actually appreciate the shining of the light? Plus, my book is also a pre-incarnational paradigm like Tolkien's. This is a world that does not have any experience of the immanence, IMMA, immanence of the divine. So it's necessarily going to be a lot darker, like the Old Testament. Summer is asking, what was your process like as you finished this series? Do you have note cards or an outline to guide you in the tying of loose ends? I eschewed an outline this time around. I had an outline for book 3. I didn't have an outline for book 5. I didn't need one. I had the story very clearly in my head, the basic outlines of it. I also felt, more than I felt ever before, that if I were to try to figure out the structure of the whole thing beforehand, then I would have suffocated the life out of the characters, because I knew the general trajectory of where they needed to go, but I also felt like there was going to be a lot of surprises, because this is book 5. This is where everything flips on its head. So I have to allow for enough space for the magic of the characters taking their lives into their own hands actually happening. And it happened several times, and I'm glad I did that. So the only thing I did to make myself stay on some sort of a structure was that I decided that I would have the viewpoint character scenes follow each other in the same structure, in the same rhythm in each part. So there's 4 parts to the story, and in each part the scenes of each viewpoint character follow the same order. So we have Voron starting and ending each of the 4 parts, and inside there we have Adelaida, who's a book 4 character. For those of you who don't know, she plays a major part in this book. She has 2 scenes per part, and all the rest of the characters... Oh, Haidu has 2 scenes per part, and all the rest of the characters have 1 scene per part. So those 3 characters, Voron, Adelaida, and Haidu, are the most important ones in terms of actually being viewpoint characters and moving the story along. I feel most connected to them. I think they're the most interesting for me personally, so they're the most necessary for me to dwell more on. So this was a kind of a crapshoot. It was a kind of an experiment in discovery writing for me, because I haven't been able to do discovery writing very well before. For those who don't know, discovery writing is kind of letting the story happen on its own. Normally, I wouldn't do that with a story that I wasn't confident in, because I know that I could write myself into some pretty bad corners. But because I've been with the story for so long, it's been a lot easier than I expected to keep all of the threads in line. Now, I haven't received any of the parts back yet from the editor. He might just tell me that I've messed up everything. So that's always a possibility. But I'm hoping, and I'm pretty hopeful that that's not what happened. So we'll see. But I found that it was very natural for me to not over outline. Normally, what I do at the beginning of a scene is I make sure that I understand down to the nitty gritty what the motivations, what the goals and motivations and the conflicts of my viewpoint character are, both externally and internally. And I try to make sure that those play together with each other well, that they contrast each other, that they push each other really well. And I also want to make sure that the conflict is something that doesn't distract from the main story and doesn't kind of send the character on a side journey that has nothing to do with the main journey. I have been surprised to find out that the stuff that happens in the process of discovery writing is fitting really, really well symbolically and structurally with what I've put out. So I think it's just a function of me writing the story for a long time. Seraphim is asking, a friend of mine has read your books, and he, being a huge fan of classic Grimm Brothers fairy tales, was wondering why you chose to take a lighter tone within your series. Thank you. I hope you're well. Well, I'm not sure your friend has read book 3, because it's not very light. Yeah, I'm not sure what light tone. I mean, there's some funny scenes. The hag in books 3 and 5 is intentionally comical after being kind of overbearingly awful in book 1. I mean, you need to leaven the darkness a little bit with some humor. Russian fairy tales are simultaneously hilarious and terrifying. It's a hard balance to recreate in English. Language is an important thing. the way language is structured, the way language has grown, really determines how stories are told in that language. And when you're telling a story in a different language from that, so when you're telling, let's say, a story in English that comes from a tradition of storytelling in Russian, it's not that easy to catch that balance of tones that happens, because every tradition has their own very specific and very unique way of telling stories. So I try to do justice to the originals without becoming too slavish to them. And I also want to be realistic about the human condition in the stories that I tell. Fantasy is, after all, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most effective genres at telling difficult truths well. But I also don't want it to become like the nihilism of, the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is a fantastic series, but I can only read one book per year, maybe one book every 2 or 3 years, because it's so dark. So yeah, a little bit of lightness is necessary. Do I do both alpha and beta readers? No, I only have beta. I actually, I don't have beta readers anymore. So I used to have beta readers, but I found that they were useful at a certain point, but they were useful to me at a point when I was still fairly unsure of myself and unsure of my instincts as a storyteller. Since I've been writing for a long time, and I've been putting out a lot of words over the last few years, even though they haven't all been in the Raven Sun series. And I've also taken some classes with people that are very that are real professionals in their fields, both in screenwriting and in different genres in fiction. And it's become clear to me, as after coming into contact with them and having interactions with them, that that for whatever reason my storytelling instincts are pretty good. And that's, I'm not trying to do this. I'm just saying it as a fact. I tend to have the right instincts when it comes to a storytelling direction. Now, some of you might disagree, but my editors generally agree with this. So a lot of what I was doing with beta reading and developmental editing before book 5 was basically just vetting my choices in storytelling. And most of the time, the people that I trust the most confirmed that I had made the right choices, and the things that they were, the kinds of things they were offering me in terms of advice, were very low level stuff, or maybe high level stuff, like really specific things, like should that character say this thing in that scene, right? That stuff is great, but that stuff is something that an editor can do really well, especially if he's somebody that you trust. So beta readers aren't really all that necessary to me anymore. I don't feel like they are. That might change with other series and with other books that I read. I've also stopped doing developmental edits for now for this series, and I just have a line copy editor who's very good, and I really like him. And he does more than just grammar and word choice, stuff like that. He actually does catch things, story level things, if they're really egregious. That being said, I do have a list of advanced readers that I've been cultivating over the last few years. I haven't been very good at keeping in contact with them. But if you are all interested in getting an advanced copy for free, an advanced ebook copy for free, the only thing that I would ask is that you try to read it quickly and leave a review sooner rather than later. If that's something that you're interested in, and you are not a member of my mailing list, what you should do over the next few days, if not right now, is go to nicholaskotar.com and sign up for my mailing list, because I will be sending out an email to the whole email list. I have a large email list of several thousand people and a small email list of specific advanced readers. I'm going to be looking for new readers who are willing to read it quickly and leave a review, so that when there's the wider launch, when I release it to people who are not in my mailing list or in my immediate circle of influence on Facebook and other social media, so that there will already be then some social proof, some reviews to show that this thing is not just some flash in the pan kind of thing. So yeah, John Simmons is interested. John, yeah, if you're not a member of my mailing list, make sure to sign up. I think you might be. Also, I will be sending out a request to anybody who's on my Patreon. So that's also an option. Yeah, Seraphim, Christine Catherine Rush, who I consider to be a mentor. I've taken several classes from her already live. She's a fantastic teacher and a wonderful writer. She and her husband, Dean Wesley Smith, do say that developmental editors generally are not necessary. So I think they might be for people who are really just starting out. They were definitely necessary for me for books 1, 2, and 3, but I didn't need it for book 4. How do I know that I didn't need a developmental editor? Well, first of all, I have both my mother and my sister are extremely intelligent and very well-read people, and when both of them were telling me the same things that my developmental editor was telling me about the manuscript, and they were doing it for free, then I knew that I didn't need to spend thousands of dollars on this highfalutin guy who edits for Andy Weir, who edited The Martian for Andy Weir, just so he can tell me the same things that my mother and my sister are telling me. And I'm not even exaggerating. It was almost literally this exact same things were said both by my family and my very expensive developmental editor. I do need an editor. Everybody needs an editor. Just not a developmental one that can actually do the important things of making sure that you don't say the same word 5 times in a paragraph, which is what I do a lot. I think all writers do that, actually. Let's be honest. Gosh, I'm losing my voice. It's been a long week, as it has been for the last month and a half, as I've been trudging along and going crazy. By the way, I've been writing consistently 15,000 words a week for the last month and a half. So, yeah. NaNoWriMo, baby. Is there anything that I forgot about? No, I think I've said everything in terms of my updates. So, yeah, it's a cool time. It's an exciting time in the world of my writing. I'm really, today was hard. I need to be careful about what I say because it can pop out of my mouth because I'm tired. But the death that happened today in book 5 was heavy. It was heavy, but it was good. It felt good to kill one of my main characters off. That sounds really bad, doesn't it? But it was one of these things that it just fit really well. And this character is going to come back in some form, not in a way that is hokey. So Seraphim's asking, any thoughts on translating your books into graphic novels? Absolutely. I would love to see my books in graphic novel form. I would love it. If anybody is a graphic novelist and wants to do my books and wants to do a deal with me where you get a percentage of sales and I like your work, contact me. And if Gabe Wilson is listening, that might be you, Gabe Wilson. Gabe Wilson is the fantastic and wonderful artist and writer who did the graphic novel version of the life of the martyr Eustathius, whose life is a major influence of book 1 of the Song of the Syrian. I will say this to you, Seraphim Hegwood, and this is the thing that gives me pause about graphic novels. First of all, I would love to do it. Right now, this year, I definitely don't have time to do it, but it's definitely something that I'd like to look into, especially if there's somebody, an artist who would be willing to do it with me. The interesting thing is that Dune, the graphic novel, has just come out. All right. Dune has been out for how many years? And the graphic novel was just made. It's not even out yet. The cover was just released today, I think, on Kevin J. Anderson's page. So if something like Dune, which is a major international bestseller, there's tons of money in that estate, couldn't get the thing done until now, it's probably a complicated thing. It'll probably take time and money. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'd love to see it happen. But who knows? John Simmons. See, everybody's trolling me today. Will Peter Jackson make the films? If Peter Jackson buys the rights to my films, no, he will not. I will never let it happen. Never. No. Never in a million years. Gosh, I will never. No, we're not going there, John Simmons. We're not going there. Okay. Seraphim, another question. Seraphim Reiner. A friend of mine just sent me a question for you. In the era of racial uprising and tension, he was wondering why you haven't added an African American character in Will You? Well, this person hasn't been paying attention. First of all, how can I possibly have an African American character in a world where America doesn't exist? Right? But this friend is not paying attention because there is a race of dark skinned people in my books. And I put them in way before all this stuff happened. So someone's not paying attention. Let me remove that question. I'm not going to answer the underlying meaning, essence of that question, because I don't think that fantasy is intended to be a vehicle for politics. I think fantasy is a very effective and very wonderful genre to talk about human things, the kinds of things that transcend immediate politics, and talk about what it means to be human in a larger sense. And if that is the point of your questions, of your friend's question, then I can tell you that there are many races in my books. And the way that they interact with each other, there are many different ways that they interact with each other. There is some racism in my stories. The racism is all espoused by negative characters. And for the most part, it's kind of colorblind. They will make occasional comments to each other about different races as kind of snide remarks to each other, which is normal as far as I'm concerned. But it doesn't form a major backbone, thematic backbone of my stories, because I don't want it to. Because I think that it's less important what color your skin is than what you do with your life. That's what I think. Summer is asking about my small press. Is set up as an LLC? You see, I have a wonderful process set up. I'm glad you have the infrastructure to get offshoot projects going like that graphic novel. Actually, my small press is not set up as an LLC. Not yet. There's a simple reason for that, and this is me following Dean Wesley Smith's recommendations. Dean Wesley Smith and Kristen Catherine Rush have their own independent press. It's called WMG Press. It's a very successful small press. They basically run it by themselves and with a few people that they contract out, that they have as their employees. There's no point at this point. There's no reason for me to go into LLC status right now, because at this point my fiction by itself doesn't make enough money for me to justify the jump. So becoming an LLC makes sense when you reach a certain threshold in terms of paying taxes per year. I'm not there yet. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's not because I'm not making a lot of money from my books. I'm making a perfectly decent amount from the various things that I do, including my fiction. But my fiction by itself is not making enough money right now for me to justify the jump from sole proprietorship to LLC. If you want specifics, Summer, Dean does have a course on incorporation on his courses page on Teachable. I think it's Teachable. I'm pretty sure it's Teachable. It's a good course. I do recommend it. He says that until you're paying $5,000 a year in taxes, there's no point in becoming an LLC. And when you start paying several $1,000s in taxes a year, then it does make sense, because you can get all kinds of because it'll actually help you. I guess I haven't done it, so I don't know the details of it, nor have I studied it at all, because I don't need to yet. But apparently there's ways of minimizing the tax burden if you become an LLC, but only at that point. The infrastructure that I have set up is pretty good, but I have been doing this for a few years now, and I was very careful to make sure that I have other things that provide enough money for me to be able to do fiction for a while as a kind of as something that I know is not going to be the major percentage of my income, because fiction is something that needs time to develop as a stream of income that is going to support you for the long term, especially if you're doing it independently, because the reality of independent publishing is that you're not going to be you're probably not going to be a bestseller in the sort of New York Times bestseller sense. some people do some independent publishers do become that, but most of the time they write in a genre that I don't write. Most of them write things like thrillers and easily like books that are very tropey and repeat the same pattern over and over again. Things that go along the kind of things like James Patterson, stuff like that. Since Summer, you're asking a continuation of this question, I will add it here. You say, I thought maybe an LLC would help with paying co-creators, but glad to hear it can be simpler than that. No, you actually don't need an LLC to help with co-creators. You just have to make sure that you have very distinct and well thought out contracts with people on a per project basis. That being said, I am working on a new business plan for Waystone Press that would incorporate other authors on different levels of expertise, including authors that aren't ready yet to publish, but would like to have some direction in terms of preparation of their manuscript or their general business setup that Waystone Press might be able to help with. The trick with that, of course, is that if Waystone Press is a publisher of books and then also gets into the business of helping authors and taking money for the helping of those authors, I don't want Waystone Press to become a vanity press. So I have to figure out how to make that work in such a way that it would be like a guild of co-creators and not a traditional publishing house. So if I can figure out how to do that in a way that would make sense, then that's something I'm going to be exploring more in the immediate future. So thank you for the question. It's an interesting question. For those who don't know what we're talking about, don't worry about it. Chris, the question, what's up with Viking Queen? Thank you for the question. Somebody remembers. Okay, so Viking Queen, for those who don't know, Viking Queen is a screenplay that I co-wrote with Ryan Uranchik. It is based on the life of Saint Olga of Kiev, 9th century. It is a almost fantasy history. The fantasy is very light, but really it's more of a historical show. The pilot, so we wrote a pilot, a 1-hour pilot for a projected 5-season at least series that we worked on during the course of a year, and it looked like actually the pilot episode won a bunch of awards. So I can actually call myself an award-winning screenwriter, and sometimes I do. The trick, of course, is that these awards are not major industry awards. They're the kinds of small awards that are useful in gathering a kind of portfolio that you can show people and say, look, my work has been deemed to be of a certain level of quality. Now, I'm not really into the Hollywood thing. Hollywood is a den of vipers, and I just got a tiny glimpse of it, and I want very little to do with it. That being said, I would love to see the series of St. Olga's life being brought to life on the same artistic level as something like The Last Kingdom. Although I have to say that season 4 of The Last Kingdom, I didn't manage to make it all the way through. I didn't like it. So I would love to see it happen. The thing is, it's close to my heart because it's about a saint in the Orthodox Church, and there's a lot of very, very kind of dark stuff that happened with her in the early years, and the way that historicals are going right now in Hollywood, there's a lot of almost automatic tendency to demonize any sort of religiosity and make it seem insincere at the best, and absolutely villainous at the worst. And you see this in The Last Kingdom and other such historical series all the time. So I don't want to just sell it to whoever. That being said, it would be nice to have somebody actually do something with it. Seraphim was asking, what about Russian producers? We reached out to Russian producers, and there was some initial interest. The thing about Russia is going through a very xenophobic time right now. I can say that. I'm Russian. And they were very upfront with me, and they said, we want a Russian property. I'm Russian by heritage. I speak Russian. I'm an Orthodox deacon. For them, that's not enough. They want something that is produced at home by people in Russia. So we tried several times. There were actually several producers interested. There was a producer in Latvia that was interested, but she needed to have co-financing, and she couldn't find anybody to do it. At this point, so it was languishing for a while, but now we have actually optioned the Viking Queen to a small production house. It's an exclusive option for several months, and we're hoping that this might lead to some dominoes starting to fall. Um, I honestly, I don't think anything's going to happen in the short term. I think it's a very good property. I think we did a really great job on it, and we had some really great help from some excellent screenwriters down in LA. I feel very good about the project in general. But I think this is something that's going to happen. I think it will happen, but I think it will happen much later. I think this is something that's gonna sit on a shelf for a while, and after I've gotten a lot more books out into the world, and after more people start to recognize my name as an author, I think that this is something that might spark interest. That being said, I am going to be novelizing Viking Queen into a historical fantasy fiction novella series. You are the first to hear about this. This is probably going to be my immediate next project. I'm going to take the pilot episode and I'm going to make that pilot episode into a novella. And it's going to be slightly different than the actual pilot episode, which is almost a completely strict historical. This one's going to be more fantasy, and I'm not sure if I'm even going to keep the original historical names. I might just keep the storyline and change the names and make it into a kind of a mythic version of Russia. I haven't decided yet, but that is happening. That is coming your way, probably around October time. So hopefully that answers your question, Chris. Summer, one more question. Your reply made to think he's an FYI on hybrid as opposed to vanity publishing, where you're traditional. Okay, sorry, that's not a question. Okay. Yeah, I will look that up. Thank you. That's very helpful. So for those who don't know, David is a student of mine from the seminary. So yes, speaking of trolls, Father, do limone exist in your books, and if so, how many? Limone or lemons? I don't know the context for this, Dave Matthews. I'm sorry. So you're going to have to tell me about why limone are suddenly so interesting to seminarians from Jordanville. There is not a single lemon in the Raven Sun series. I can say this for a fact. Not a single lemon. They use the burning birds in the Marco Polo. You're not... Oh, lame. That's really lame. I didn't know that because I watched episode 1 of Marco Polo, and there were so many exposed bodies in that first episode that I was like, no. But St. Olga originated that story, so if they used that, they copied it, so I'm still using it. There you go. All right. Any more questions? It's getting late. My voice is getting more and more raggedy. I want to get up early tomorrow to get a few more 1,000 words in. So now's your last chance, everybody. Get your questions in. Otherwise, it'll be time for me to go. If while I'm waiting for the last questions here, I would ask all of you if you would be so kind as to, if you've read the books and if you've enjoyed them, would you please take the graphic from the event page and share it with somebody either on your page, either in your page or on your in a private message to somebody. The books are all on sale. Book 1 is 99 cents, book 2 is $1.99, book 3 is $2.99, book 4 is $3.99. And to you, I will say that book 5 will be $4.99 when it becomes available, but that's only for a short time, and I will only be making that information available to you lovely people. It's going to be $5.99 as soon as I launch to the wider world. So now's the time to buy if you haven't bought them before. They're never going to be this cheap ever again. I can pretty much guarantee. So if you like them, share them with somebody. Summer is asking, what can we do to spread the word about your books? Request them from our local libraries. I mean, you can request them from the libraries. Absolutely. I am connected to all of the different library networks. Library sales are not a particularly lucrative thing for me at this point. They might become in the future. I haven't really gone very deeply into library marketing yet. So maybe ordering them from your local bookstore might be something that could be helpful. Or just let people know about it. Word of mouth is the best marketing. If you say to somebody that you know, I think you like these books, most people will consider that a pretty good recommendation. Most people do buy books based on recommendations of people they either know or they trust. So that's the answer to that. You can just click on the image of the event page, or go to my go to Nicholas Kotar, go to the Nicholas Kotar Facebook page. The photo, the image file is available. Church bookstores are also an option if they're open. As some of you, or maybe all of you, may know, in Ancient Faith Publications almost folded because church bookstores closed for a long time, for like a month or two. So yeah, church bookstores are an excellent resource. If you have access to a church bookstore, if you know people in a church bookstore, here's what I would suggest that you do, or even your local bookstore, have them contact me directly, because I can give them a better deal than they would get from Ingram, from the distributor that they will get it from otherwise. And especially if they mention that they were sent by a fan, then I will give them a special deal. So yeah, tell your church bookstores to reach out to me directly, either on Facebook or by email. You can find my email contact form on my website at nicholaskotar.com. So that's an option as well. That's a very good option. So if that's something that you have access to, that would be great. Seraphim, the Viking Queen musical rock opera, yeah, with like ethno metal, like with Russian ethno metal, totally, that would be amazing. I would love that. But if anybody wants to write that for me, let me know. Let's make it happen. Okay, I think that's all I have for today. I've been here for an hour, so I think that's probably enough even for all y'all. Oh, John Simmons sold a bunch of the song this year at your festival a while back. Thank you for doing that, John. I really appreciate that. Honestly, you guys are very, very helpful to me. And honestly, the success of any author is entirely based on his readers. So whatever you can do, I will be very grateful. I much appreciate it. Oh, one thing. There's going to be a launch party. I haven't set the date yet because of Amazon. I will make that date. I will make that date known to you all probably next week. It'll most likely be something like July 28th or 29th, something like that. We'll see exactly what it will be. If you come to the launch party, and if you come to the launch party, everybody who will be present at the launch party will be automatically entered to receive one of 3 paperback versions of Book 5. And the drawing will be at the launch party. So all you have to do is show up. And if you see the event page on Facebook, which I will be putting up early next week, share it with people. Let people know that there is a giveaway at that launch party. So just come in force and come and celebrate with me. Seraphim, you were asking, Reimer was asking about what am I drinking. Seraphim came in late. I am drinking the 3 hierarchs, Seraphim. I'm drinking 3 hierarchs. 3 philosophers from Plumcake. John is asking, online party. Yeah, of course, launch party, online, naturally. So it'll be on Facebook, and it'll be live. So we'll have some games and I'll share cool tidbits and photos and things like this. So it'll be fun. Yeah, so come by. I'll let you know. I'll let you all know about that later. Anyway, that's all for me. I think, everybody. Good night. It's been lovely hanging out and chatting with you all. Professor Cyril, if you're talking about tomorrow a.m. for Amon Sul, it's been moved. It's on Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, not Friday. So we felt like we needed a little bit more time in case you missed that. So, sorry. Now I know what you're talking about. I'll shut up. Okay, everybody, it's been a long day. I need to go to sleep before I make a bigger fool of myself than I normally do. It's been lovely chatting. Thank you all. Go buy the books. Let people know about them. Let's make this into a movement, shall we? I will see you all later. Thanks, everybody.